Breaking news, a plane with 5 passengers on board missing for 53 years has been located. On January 27, 1971, a jet took off on a snowy and cold night from Burlington International.
Figure out how he got located after all these years. That's crazy.
Airport to Providence, Rhode Island. The plane was carrying 2 crew members and 3 employees. The flight vanished, and despite searches over many years, none of the individuals were ever located. An individual now believes he has found the 10-seater jet at the bottom of a lake off Juniper Island. They said the wreckage was located over Memorial Day weekend, but news of its discovery was withheld until the victims' families were informed. They have recently discovered pieces of debris, including wreckage from the plane and an oxygen tank. However, the entire aircraft has never been located until now. The individual who located the plane said he spent years looking for odd shapes at the bottom of the lake. He said, quote, "If it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, and looks sort of like a duck, it's probably a duck." All of the findings have been sent to the National Transportation Safety Board, and they will confirm if it is in fact the plane. To stay up to date on this case, make sure you click the play.
10,000 human remains were found on a farm outside of Indianapolis, and authorities are still identifying the victims. But let's get into the story. This is Herb Baumeister, the suspect.
10,000?
Herb moved his wife and 3 sons into this farm outside of Indianapolis in 1988. Authorities believe for nearly a decade.
10,000. I still can't get over that. Sorry, I had to pause that. But 10,000? How many people is that? They gotta be hundreds of people or something like that. I don't know.
Herb was using his farm to dispose of human remains that he had unalived. The remains, according to authorities, were all young men, mostly gay men, very reminiscent of John Wayne Gacy. His family, as is the case for most serial killers, were not suspecting that Herb was doing anything until one day, one of his sons found a human skull on the property and brought it to his wife. They called the police. The police wanted to do some investigation on the property, but his wife refused. But once she began to see the evidence piling up against him, she divorced him. Before Herb could be apprehended, he fled to Canada in 1996, where he then unalived himself with a shotgun. He left a note, but he never admitted to anything. He never confessed. So it's been nearly 30 years that authorities have been investigating this property and going through all of the remains. They believe and suspect that he is guilty of unaliving at least 25 people. Now, the human body has 206 bones in it. In doing the math, there's approximately, possibly, around 48 bodies on his property.
That's a lot of folks, man. Who knows? They probably ain't even found the people that's even deeper than that. He probably spread them out, not only on this property, but in other places too. But that's sad that that happened, and it's sad that he even unalived himself, because we can't even get more answers.
This location is about 3 hours south of where John Wayne Gacy disposed of his bodies in his crawl space near Kirkwood, Illinois, Des Plaines, Illinois. And it's about 4 hours south from where Jeffrey Dahmer did his crimes.
Y'all, this is so weird and bizarre. So do y'all remember Amber from Teen Mom? She was one of the moms. I think she was with a guy named Gary. And I never liked Amber. I'm not gonna lie. Amber had a lot of issues on the show. Make a long story short, Gary is now the one that's with her daughter, or their daughter. Right now, Amber is with this guy named Gary, another Gary. But the only thing about this Gary is he's currently missing.
They love Garys. What? Garys? What? Currently what?
And according to what people are saying, they went on a trip to North Carolina. They were also engaged, I guess. And this is when he went missing. They had an argument or a confrontation not long before he went missing. Y'all, this whole situation is giving me Chris Watts. The way she acted on that live, whatever she went on, gave me Chris Watts vibes. The way she was talking gave me Chris Watts vibes. He was last seen on June 9th on a camera at I believe a Walgreens. She's saying she's scared, y'all. That's what she's saying. She's saying she's scared, and they had an argument, and she does have his phone. I guess he took his wallet and keys but left his phone. Why would you leave your phone? And then she also said, please, if anybody sees him or hears anything, please, I'm begging all of you guys, I'm praying for anybody that sees him. Nobody has found him or heard from him yet. Like, what? I'm praying for anyone that sees. That doesn't even make sense. He's 205 pounds, by the way, bald, and has brown eyes.
The newest technology that we have acquired here at the FBI laboratory is 3D laser scanning. This technology allows you to set up on a tripod the scanner, which is hooked up to a laptop, and what you see is pretty much what it captures. And it's doing it at a high rate of speed. You can scan a crime scene approximately within 30 minutes or less.
Mirrors spinning at up to 25.
Man, they up here trying to be more efficient. They said they trying to do their job and get gone.
500 revolutions per minute. Deploy an array of laser beam signals all over the scene, measuring distance, angles, even colors. No detail escapes detection. The scan takes minutes, not hours. The result is a 360-degree digital image with such dense resolution that it actually looks like a photograph.
This teacher had with her 15-year-old student. It was the year 2003, and Karen Louise Ellis was a 36-year-old mother of three living in Melbourne, Australia with her husband, Stephen. She was a PE teacher at her local high school, and her husband would have to travel a lot for work, which meant that she would often be left home alone with the children. To the outside world, Karen's life seemed perfect. However, she claims that things weren't perfect and that she was actually very lonely. She didn't like that her husband had to travel so much for work, she felt neglected, and she was seeking some type of attention. Unfortunately, she decided that the person that was going to give her this affection and this type of attention was her 15-year-old student, Ben. Ben was
Ben over there worried about playing Mario Brothers, and the teacher wanted him to play some other kind of pipe.
one of her PE students, and the two of them would spend a lot of time together on the basketball courts. Ben would make some flirtatious comments towards Karen, and Karen enjoyed the attention. Now, it's not uncommon for students to have a crush on their teachers. Like, it's somewhat normal, but it's what those teachers do with that attention and with those crushes that matters. And so,
Well, I don't know. The teachers these days are different from my kind of teachers. Back when I was growing up, we had teachers that looked like this, and you really didn't want to do nothing with them. Nowadays, they got teachers that look like this. And
instead of putting a stop to this flirting, Karen flirted back. It got to the point where Karen was actually looking forward to go to work, not because she enjoyed teaching or wanted to do her job, but because she looked forward to seeing Ben. She said that Ben wasn't like other 15-year-old boys, that he wasn't on his skateboard, he wasn't giggling, he wasn't acting stupid, that he was actually very mature for his age, and that sometimes he was even more mature than she was. At first, they were only flirting with each other, but then things escalated. One day, while they were on the basketball courts, Ben leaned in for a kiss, and Karen accepted. From there, the two of them would meet at the basketball courts, drive over to Karen's home, and then there they would have. According to phone records, Karen sent Ben almost 500 text messages, and the two of them exchanged about 123 voice messages. So this was very intense. This went on for the next 6 weeks until they were finally caught. Now, the way that they were caught was that one day while they were doing their usual routine of meeting on the basketball courts and then heading over to Karen's
he had him some in school. It's crazy.
home, Ben's mother actually spotted them leaving, and she said that this didn't look like a teacher doing a favor by driving her student home, that they looked like they were husband and wife. The whole situation just felt off, so Ben's mom decided to call the police and report Karen's abuse. Karen was taken into police custody, and what she told police was shocking. Okay, go to part 2. It's part 2 on the case of Karen Louise Ellis. So at the police station, Karen admitted to being with Ben and also acknowledged that this was wrong. So at first it seemed like she did have some type of remorse, but then she went on to say, quote, "Well, if I were to divorce my husband tomorrow and Ben would have turned 18, I would imagine that we would continue to see each other." Which honestly confused a lot of people. You know, they were like, okay, dude.
Imagine being her husband and she telling you she won't even let the 15-year-old go. What would that do to your ego? What would that do to your pride? But stuff like this happen every day. I'm pretty sure somebody going through this right now. Something similar, but not probably with the age difference, but the same kind of situation. Trust me.
you actually feel like what you did was wrong, or do you not feel like what you did was wrong and you're just basically waiting for Ben to turn 18. After her arrest, she did have to resign from her teaching position, and when her husband Stephen heard what she had done, he just could not believe that his wife had abused a 15-year-old boy. So he packed up everything from the house, moved out, and said that he needed a break from the marriage. Fast forward to the trial, Karen pled guilty to the essay of a boy under 16 years old, and this could carry a maximum sentence of at least 15 years. During the trial, she was asked, "Why did you do this? Like, why did you cross this line?" And she basically said that she was very neglected by her husband, and that pushed her to pursue this relationship. Now, her husband Stephen was there during the trial, and when he heard this, he started to feel very guilty. He spoke out and said that if he had known Karen had felt so neglected, he would have stopped traveling for work, because then she would have never done this. After that, he started to show up to the trial every single day to
Oh, she had this in her. She would have did this. This was a part of her.
show support for Karen, because he truly felt like this was his fault. Now, this rekindling didn't really last that long, and in the end, Stephen divorced Karen because it's not really his fault. Just because he traveled for work does not mean that his wife had to go get involved with the minor. As for how Ben felt about this, he spoke out during the trial and said that he didn't feel like he was a victim. In fact, he insisted that he was the one who pursued Karen, that he doesn't regret what happened, and that he doesn't believe he was harmed by this. However, a handful of psychologists have spoken out about this, and they state that just because Ben doesn't see himself as a victim doesn't mean he isn't. However, the judge actually agreed with Ben and was like, "Listen, if you don't feel like you're a victim, then I'm going to take that into consideration." And in the end, he sentenced Karen to a 22-month suspended jail term, which basically meant that she was let free. However, the prosecution did appeal this, and in the end, she was resentenced to only 6 months in prison, and she also had to register as a offender. When Karen was released from jail, she sat down with Ben to do a 60 minutes interview, and this interview shocked everyone. The two of them said that they were still friends, that they still had contact with each other. Ben continued to say that he didn't see
In other words, he still knocked the dust off her.
himself as a victim. Karen went on to say that her life has completely changed. You know, she lost her job, her husband, her family, she went to prison, and she just feels like her punishment was too much. I think at this point in the interview, Ben was like 16 or 17 years old, and the interviewer was like, "Okay, why don't you leave Ben alone? Like, why are you still having contact with your victim?" And Karen was like, "Well, he contacted me first, and we're friends, and it's nice to talk to someone that's been through this." The interviewer was like, "How do you not understand how you need to leave Ben alone? Like, it's insane." Now, that interview was in 2005, so as of today, I don't know if they're still friends, but overall it's just a really sad situation, and I just hope that Ben has healed from this. Male SA just needs to be taken more seriously, and a lot of people feel like Karen got really too light of a sentence, and that if the roles were reversed, you know, if she was a man that had done this to a little girl, that the guy would have been in jail for so many years, but because she was a woman and a mother, like, the judge showed her empathy and compassion, and that type of stereotyping needs to end.
I'm at the Victoria Police Museum on Spencer Street, Melbourne, and I want to show you guys something really cool. So this is a display on fingerprint technology. So you take a piece of paper, you put your thumb on it, and then you put it just in here under the microscope, and then that's my fingerprint. Now I sanitized my hands and washed them just before I came here. I feel gross now, but it gives you an example of what kinds of fingerprints you have, and it turns out I have a loop.
I've heard of people catching crazy shit when they go magnet fishing, but evidence from a murder? So on April 14th, someone took their magnet to a creek in Georgia. And usually at the end of the day, you get a bunch of rusty metal and debris. I've done it before. But this guy pulls up a .22 caliber rifle. I would immediately think, oh, this was for sure used in a crime and immediately dumped. But this guy brushes it off. 2 days later, he goes back to the same spot, Horse Creek in Telfair County. And this time he pulls up a bag containing a cell phone, 2 driver's licenses, and credit cards. And it turns out it belonged to an elderly couple murdered back in 2015, and their case has still not been resolved. This is Bud Runyon and his wife June. Bud had posted an ad on Craigslist seeking a 1966 Mustang. 28-year-old Ronnie J. Towns saw that ad, and he messaged Bud saying he would be willing to sell his. But authorities say Ronnie never owned a Mustang, and he was actually looking to rip the couple off. Ronnie had apparently been out of work for months and was living with his parents on their 200-acre property. So Bud and June drive 3 hours to meet up with Ronnie and get this car, but that's the last time they're ever seen or heard from. Days later, the couple's car was found in a lake and their bodies were found nearby. Ronnie Towns was charged with malice murder and armed robbery. He's actually been sitting in jail for 9 years because his trial keeps getting delayed. Right now, his trial is scheduled for August, and this new evidence might seal the deal. And magnet fishing guy will definitely have to testify in court.
This is a terrifying, gruesome true crime case that is going to ruin your day in more ways than one. After a totally normal
I don't know about if I'm ready to get my day ruined or not. I've been having a pretty good day, actually. If you have, leave it down in the comments.
Normal night out with friends, 27-year-old Allison Botha drove back to her apartment. She parked her car in a different place than she usually parked, but as soon as she did park, a man with a weapon forced himself into her car and forced Allison into the passenger seat. Before Allison could even fully understand what was going on, because it happened so fast, she's now kidnapped in her own vehicle and her kidnapper is driving her car down the road. The kidnapper was telling Allison that he was not going to hurt her, but when the kidnapper drove into a second location and picked up an accomplice, it became clear to Allison that these men had a sinister plan for her. What happened to 27-year-old Allison Botha next is extremely graphic and gruesome, so just a warning, don't be like eating snacks or
Man, she should have jumped out the car. I don't care if he was going 10, 20, 30, 40. I would have jumped out.
Anything during this video. Two men drove her into a secluded area and parked her car there, and they told her, this is where we're going to SA you now, and then they asked her if she was going to resist, and to survive she told them, no, I won't resist. After both men brutally SA'd Allison, they decided that then they were going to end her life. Allison was stabbed over 30 times in her stomach, like 35, 37 times. There were so many stabs that they actually couldn't determine how many there was.
They act like this was personal, like they had something against her or something. Usually when something like that happened to somebody that many times, it's some kind of personal thing behind it. But for you not to know this person and for them to do it that many times.
And then she survived that somehow. So then the men slashed her throat 16 times. There were over 50 cut marks on Allison's body. And then one of the men asked the other one if he thought that Allison was dead now, and that man responded, yes, she's definitely dead. Nobody could survive that. What they did not know is Allison did survive that, and she was playing dead, listening to everything they were saying, including their real names, their first names. So when the attackers drove off, Allison was laying there and she knew that she was probably going to die. She was laying in the sand, no clothes, bleeding everywhere, but she found the strength to write her attackers' names in the sand with her finger, and then under that she wrote, I love mom. So when they found her body, her mom would know that she was thinking about her. That absolutely tore me up when I read that, by the way. I couldn't even imagine the fear and pain that Allison was feeling while she was lying there, knowing that she was probably going to die. But then the unthinkable happened. Allison didn't die, and she found the strength to get up and get herself to somewhere safe with someone that would help her. But once Allison stood up, she realized
that's a blessing to be able to make it through something like that.
How severe her injuries actually were. Because of all the injuries to Allison's stomach, her intestines were outside of her body. So she had to like hold her one hand here to keep her insides like inside of her body. Then she's realizing that her head keeps falling back, and that's because due to all the cuts to her neck, she was nearly decapitated. Her head is hanging on like by a string. So with one hand, she's holding her stomach to keep her intestines from coming out, and then with her other hand, she's holding her head in place, and she starts walking down the road like that. The first car to drive by and see Allison, and honestly I couldn't even imagine what she probably looked like, did stop but then changed their mind and kept driving down the road. But the next car to drive by luckily did stop to help Allison. A gentleman that was in that car named Tien was like an actual angel. He was actually in school studying to become a vet, so he had, you know, like some kind of medical education at this time. He did his best to give her medical and emotional help while they waited for the paramedics to arrive, which, you know, for some reason it took almost 2 hours for the ambulance to get there and like 4 phone calls. But regardless, he was doing his
Man, it sounded like she was in the middle of the hood. What happened?
best to keep her awake during that time. He was even telling her, "You have the most beautiful eyes, please keep them open." And by some miracle, Alison Vata did survive this gruesome, awful attack. And she actually made an almost full recovery as well. I mean, physically. I'm sure the mental wounds took longer to heal than the physical ones. Alison was quickly able to identify her attackers, these scum of the earth rats, Franz and Tiens. These men were serial R-worders and had recently been...
Oh no. Look at dude on the left. He looked like a creep with that mustache. He got bangs that go off to the side. And look at the dude on the right. He looks sketchy as hell.
Been arrested for 3 total counts of essaying women, but the judge had released them with no bail or anything right before Alison's attack while they awaited their trials. It's actually said that these, I'm not even going to call them men, they're scummy rats, were confused that they were being arrested with attempted murder because they could not believe that Alison survived all those wounds that they inflicted on her. Tiens was sentenced to life in prison plus 25 years without the possibility of parole, and Franz was sentenced to 3 life sentences without the possibility of parole. But sadly, and we've talked about this before, sometimes life in prison without the possibility of parole does not mean life in prison without the possibility of parole, because only last year in July of 2023 it was decided that these scummy rats would be released from prison. So right now, at this very minute, they are out somewhere in the world, free with the rest of us. I am so sick of covering cases with endings like this. It's such a...
How can somebody be free after stabbing somebody 30 times? Like, that's crazy. This system they got set up, it ain't right. It ain't right. It's sketchy. It's sometimey. Put it like that. But anybody that did something like that need to be thrown under the jail. That lady didn't do nothing. Probably out minding her business. Probably had a family. You know, people loved her. And they really thought that they killed her.
Slap in the face to Alison and her bravery and strength to release the men that did that to her. Whoever was in charge of making that decision, you are scummy rats, just like Tiens and Franz.
Let me show you really quick how a computer forensic machine looks like. This is a forensic recovery of evidence device, also known as FRED, and we purchased it from Digital Intelligence. At the top, we have the Ultra Bay, also known as a write blocker, and the idea is to...
That's that thing they hooked up Diddy computer to.
Connect your evidence here, the hard drive, and without your operating system corrupting it. And then these two here are the SATA drives, and these are to install the operating system. And the hot swappable bays here in the bottom are for you to connect extra hard drives, and that way you can store your evidence right there. I just connected a computer hard drive to the write blocker, and this hard drive will be acting as evidence. So next, I will be getting a copy of this hard drive in the forensic way. Now that the hard drive is connected, I'm opening the Tableau Imager application, and here at the very bottom, you can see the hard drive itself.
Wallace was reported missing May 6, 2024 by his mother, Kenetta Robinson. She told Greenwood County deputies that she last saw him at about 8 a.m. at their home after he returned from a job interview.
19-year-old Tyrell Wallace's remains were found inside these 96 woods on Thursday. His family says he had a backpack with him with his birth certificate still inside because he was coming back from a job interview. Former high school football player vanished after a job interview on May 6.
We was on that next street right there looking for Tyrell for 30 days.
This week, authorities discovered he was closer to home than expected.
Tyrell was found back here, I'm going to say maybe 200 feet.
Towards the bottom?
Yes, sir.
Bottom of the hill?
Maybe 200 feet away from his home.
A pool that the 19-year-old and his siblings played in still sits at the edge of the woods.
It hurts because he was close to home.
Man, I want to know how he died. Did they do an autopsy to figure out what went on? Because it is kind of strange to be coming back from a job interview and then end up in the woods. I don't know. I want to hear more.
We were right there.
A painful reminder for grieving friends and family still searching for closure.
Why would a 19-year-old just walk in the woods?
I don't understand it. But I most definitely want some answers.
The Greenwood County Coroner's Office says it's continuing to work closely with the Greenwood County Sheriff's Office to determine what happened to Wallace. She wants to give this last message.
I wish I could have saved you from that, but I couldn't help him.
This Atlanta man said he was in extreme mode and reportedly hijacked a bus and killed a passenger. It's like top 5 headlines I've ever seen. This is Joseph Greer behind me. He's a convicted felon who will now face more than 30 years in jail after hijacking a bus, killing a passenger, and going on a pursuit. Yeah, the police chased him, and he did not stop. He was in the zone. This happened 2 days ago, June 11th at 4:30 p.m. in Atlanta. Joseph Greer held the driver at gunpoint, told him not to stop. The police heard gunshots going off. There were 17 passengers on that bus. One of them made the calls to the police. One of the passengers got shot and was transported to a hospital but died to his injuries. In terms of Greer's past, he had been arrested 19 times prior before this, and almost all of those charges involved a handgun.
That boy was Pistol Pete out here. And I'm sorry for everybody that lost their lives, but dude was out here wilding.
Obviously kept going. It hit a bunch of police cars. They had to use a rifle to shoot at the engine to disable the bus from moving any further. Now here's the crazy part. Police interviewed him. He was like, yeah, I'm just a little bipolar, having an episode right now. That was a quote from him. This is another quote. He said, I'm just in extreme mode right now. I feel like this is kind of like the crashing out stuff I see you guys comment. Maybe extreme mode will be the new thing. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below.
7 people have now been arrested in the case of missing 8-month-old Maya Tucker. And yes, I know this is a newborn photo, but that's the most recent one we have. Now, last week, Maya Tucker, or Maya Rudd, as she's also been called, was reported missing after police performed a welfare check and found that she was not in the care of her parents. Now, allegedly, when she was born, she had tested positive for Smith at the hospital. But from what I can gather, they allegedly still let her go home with her parents. Now, her mother, Tesla Tucker, and her father, Cage Rudd, were arrested on a slew of charges, including smug charges, after they were found with a crap ton of fent and Smith. They were also charged with child endangerment, CA, all the charges. They were found at a hotel. Police then executed a search warrant on the home that Maya and her parents supposedly shared with her grandfather, her paternal grandfather, named Ricky Smith. And he was arrested on trafficking, smug charges, as well as CA and child endangerment. But that wasn't it. They ended up arresting her paternal grandmother, Billy Smith, on an outstanding DV warrant. And while they were there arresting her, they witnessed this man, Timothy Roach, throw some smugs he wasn't prescribed under his vehicle and arrested him as well. It's not clear how he is connected to the family. Well, yesterday, they arrested Maya's maternal grandparents, Talia Tucker and David Tucker. Now, they had custody of Maya's oldest 3 siblings. Those 3 siblings were taken out of their care and put in the foster system. Apparently, they both had some outstanding warrants. Now, so far, it seems that the family has been anything but cooperative. The parents allegedly told police at first that Maya had been taken by CPS, but that was revealed to be a lie. And no one has seen Maya since the beginning of April. Now, Maya is said to have brown hair and green eyes. Now, authorities say they do not have any evidence to believe that Maya is...
Hey, we need to find Maya. Because why would you go on a run and not report in?
unalive, but they also don't have any evidence to believe that she is alive. So if you know anything about this, please contact the authorities or Kentucky State Police.